Our next speaker is a trailblazer in the space of sustainability and continues to take charge of sustaining social and political change throughout her work. Kerry Duggan is a national political advisor, visionary climate tech executive, and a former government official. During the Obama-Biden administration, Duggan served as White House Deputy Director for Policy in the office of then Vice President Biden and Deputy Director of President Obama's Detroit Task Force. Duggan is a leader in the sustainability movement, having been named the founding director of the University of Michigan's SEAS Sustainability Clinic in Detroit and holding several public leadership roles, including at the USA Department of Energy. Duggan is the founder and CEO of SustainabiliD, a woman-owned, woman service disabled, veteran-operated, Detroit-based diverse small business working with game changers to equitably solve the climate crisis. Duggan is also a corporate board director and advises numerous climate tech companies and funds. Please help me welcome to the stage, Kerry Duggan. Hello.
Hello, and thank you. It's always impossible to listen to that introduction, but thank you.
It's well deserved. We had to cut some of it out too. It's always hard to cut things out, to be honest, because they're all worth mentioning. Kerry, thank you for joining us. Such a pleasure to have you here in the room.
Are you kidding? I just want to sit and listen. I've loved just listening and learning and writing down and underlying what everyone else is saying. So thank you for having me. Thank you, Yardstick. You guys are so much fun. I have to say, Ebby, thanks for inviting me today. Ebby and I go back so many years. So it's an honor to be able to come full circle and partner on something like this.
Fantastic. Kerry, you bring in so much knowledge and information into a space that a lot of us have a lot to learn about, really. So tell us from the standpoint of SustainabiliD, right? The group and its mission. What drew you to that work, and tell us more about what you really do, kind of in lamest terms for us.
Well, picking up from Ariane's comment about, sit up straight when your blessings show up, sort of an inverse thing happened about 5 years ago. I was working at the White House for the then Vice President, now President, and for President Obama in Detroit, as you said. And we were, I'll just say, politely invited to leave. So I worked, till January 19th. And then I was kind of like, what am I supposed to do next? And of course, I was being recruited for different jobs and contemplating, what the future would look like after basically 7 years of public service. And I had lunch with a prominent recruiter who was in fact recruiting me. Halfway through the lunch, he said, and this is a Black man of prominence, and he said, it wasn't Ebby, you need to hang your own shingle. Your work will come to you. I think we heard that at the top of the call today. And I thought, wow, that seems pretty high risk after 7 years of public service. But I did it. I took the leap of faith, like Naima said, on myself, hung my own shingle. And in 5 years in business, I may have spent $300 on marketing. So,
wow.
Yeah. So I feel very,
Wow.
That's how it happened. And then to answer your actual question of what we do in my shop, as you said, I'm very proud of my diverse team. We only have one male, happens to be my husband, that does some work with us. We work in two areas. One is we work with large institutions and companies that are ripe for that disruption that's happening in the world around the ESG DEI topics. So I get in there with them and I do high-level executive work to try and figure out what their play is. And I'm particularly interested in place-based work. So I'm very much grounded in place. I am in Detroit. This is not a fake background. This is where I live, and I'm loud and proud about it. The other half of our work is really working with these climate tech solution companies. So the folks who are in fact going to be part of your everyday life in the years ahead, I'm looking for those major disruptors and trying to grow them and scale them nationally and globally at speed. So that really is the growth area of our company. And so it's a lot of fun. And what it means is that I end up partnering with all sorts of people to remove roadblocks for these companies to thrive in municipalities and government and different opportunities. So having a blast, growing a great team, and love partnering with Yardstick.
Love it. I love the journey, Carrie. And man, I'm so interested in how you've managed to only spend 300 on marketing. So we'll have to connect afterwards in that space. But really incredibly fascinating background. I mean, you've worked in the White House, you've worked in also higher education, you've worked across grassroots movements. Your body of work is quite vast and diverse, and you probably have a lot of really awesome stories and not so awesome stories too. How are you able to implement climate change projects in your time in the White House in particular and as a political advisor? That's very interesting, I think, for all of our audience. Would love to hear from you.
Yeah, well, I had a great benefit of sort of growing my political chops and learning, truly being taught politics. So, we all go to school and get a degree in something or other. We also learn a lot on the margins of our day job and our education. And I think a lot about this. Like Erin, I'm working on a book right now that's going to tell the real stuff. Like, where did I really learn how to talk to people? Well, it's being Irish and working in an Irish pub. And that has served me really well later in my career. So those are a lot of like foreshadowing. But when I worked at the White House, I'd come directly from the Department of Energy. And so another sort of what I would call free grad degree, I got to learn about the state of technology, what the cutting edge was on top of my policy experience. So I took all that with me into the White House. I also took 6.5 years of doing ground game work in Detroit into the White House. In fact, that's how I got picked. And I'll talk about that in my book. And Abby, you'll love this. My interview with then Vice President Joe Biden I was introduced, sir, this is in the West Wing office. This is Kerry Duggan. She's from the Department of Energy. She's from Detroit and she played basketball. Guess when he looked up from his desk? Detroit and basketball. And the big interview question was, so what position did you play? And I said, well, sharpshooter, sir. And that was accurate. And I know Ebby's laughing because he knows it's true. And I think I got that job in many ways because I didn't go to Harvard. I went to, a school where there was grit and I worked for everything and I had my head down and I was not a peacock. So that's, I think about, yes, I do high level policy stuff, but it's the being a real human and leading with humanity and probably a smidge of gumption that helped me have success. And then, fast forward many years, as Arian said, I ended up being asked by now President Biden to be on his unity task force to reconcile some policy differences at an extremely high level. This is with Secretary Kerry and Gina McCarthy and Catherine Flowers, who was then from the Bernie Sanders campaign. And that's some of the work I'm so proud of because my focus is really environmental justice. That's what I went to graduate school for. And I get to work with some of the brightest minds in the world to figure out how do we actually do that at this moment when DEI is front and center. My piece of that is really addressing the environmental injustices that communities of color and low income have faced. And now we have a president that really cares and alignment there. So I've got this through line from very early in my career to today where I get to work at that intersection, and that it just brings me joy. It's not work because yes, it's hard and working on climate is daunting, but the people I work with, the network, the passion, the love, it's all there. So I feel very, very blessed.
And the impact, the incredible impact, Kerry. Kerry, when is your book coming out? You need to make sure you let us know so that we can also promote it. Okay, we look forward to that. That's going to be phenomenal, like insights. So as we're learning, about what you've done and in the space, what can be done to make the climate crisis from your perspective, your expertise perspective, to make the climate crisis a topic that many more of us know about and care about? I mean, you're constantly working to impact. What do you think is almost like the responsibility of those who should kind of learn about it on their own and seek it?
Yeah, well, sadly, because of the way climate is playing out, there's nobody that's safe from a climate impact. Wherever you live in the country, in the world, you're being impacted. So I think part of it is truly just recognizing what your impacts are, because, from a scientific perspective, there's 3 options. You can mitigate, adapt, or suffer, or some combination of the 3. So I will tell you, I chose to live in Michigan and move back to Detroit after my time in the administration because I'd lived through Hurricane Sandy and experienced the roof blowing off the elevator shaft in our building. And I have 2 kids. And so for me, I know that I have a very fancy resume, but I'm a human being and I'm a mom. Like Naima says, like that, I'm centered in that, and I'm trying to protect my kids and the planet they're growing up on. So I recognize where the impacts are, and then I turn that into action. So you mentioned the C Sustainability Clinic here in Detroit, which I'm the founding director of. That's a direct response to our climate impact in Detroit, which is flooding in people's basements. And these, many folks here in Detroit can't afford to do the modifications to their home. So I am diving in, digging in deep where I live in place. And that's what I would say to everybody, no matter where you live, there's something you can find to do in your community. And there are resources now, particularly with the legislation, the federal side, that are going to trickle into your states, and you're going to be able to figure out how to access resources. But if I leave you with anything, it's like, put on your creative thinking hat, because that's what it's really going to take. And that goes all the way up to the federal level. In my current role on the Secretary of Energy's advisory board, I'm trying to, as quickly as I can, by slowing down and meditating, how can we find creative solutions to these problems? And I practice that in my work. I practice that in partnership, because this is not going to solve itself. The technologies I mentioned, these climate tech solution companies, they can't grow legs and walk in and deploy themselves. It takes relationships, diplomacy, and patience. But everybody can do something where they live. And I do encourage you, if you haven't done some tour of duty in public service, like that's my main thing. I want to see young people get involved in, like encourage them to do that, because it's so rewarding. I have zero regrets about my 7 years in service, but there's ways to do it in your hometown on an advisory board. I know a lot of the folks on the phone are corporate, but you can squeeze out another 5 hours a month to do something in your community.
Thank you for that. And thank you for serving all of us in this space, this very critical space, and sharing information and knowledge for us to carry us through, and hopefully go out there encouraging everybody to do their part and be responsible in this space. Thank you, Kerry, so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. An honor.